So this is part 2 in our 3-part series in terms of how to vet out a ThemeForest template. In the first video, we talked about designs, the gotchas in terms of design. In this video, we'll talk about the gotchas in template. So let's get started. So I'm going to go to ThemeForest and go to WordPress, and we'll look at a popular theme. And let's take a look at Aveda. Let's go to, well, on the right hand side is where we're going to be focusing on. And on the right hand side we see metrics that I use in terms of vetting out the template once we've figured out what top three templates work in terms of the design. So the first thing I want to look at is the sales volume. So typically I will look for templates that have high sales volume. For the case of Aveda, it's definitely really high, so that's definitely a pro, a positive thing. Now I'm not too concerned that there's 382,474 sales for this particular template, meaning, okay, there's a possibility that there's 382,000 blah 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 websites using the same template, because in terms of templates, there's two types. Well, I categorize them under two types. One, it's a framework template, and the second one is a one-off template. And I'll go into detail of what the differences are. Aveda is a framework type template, so because of that, I'm not concerned about the high sales volume, and that my website's gonna look, or it's gonna be the same as 382,474 websites out there. I'm not too concerned about that. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to look at comments. So a high comment count is, it tells me that, okay, there's a lot of activity that's going on with a template, and I don't really assume it's bad or good. I mean, if it's high, that doesn't tell me anything. I mean, if it's a high amount of comments but they're all praises, well, that's definitely a good sign. But if it's a high number of comments but they're all complaints of, oh, this doesn't work and that doesn't work, well, that's something I would consider. But I would consider it in terms of, okay, if somebody complains or makes a comment that there's something broken in the template, I consider the fact, okay, does the support team for the template, do they respond quickly? And do they respond often? That to me is important. And how they respond is also important as well. So yeah, it is a problem that there's a lot of comments that point out issues. But I also consider, yeah, if they respond well and they respond quickly, that's another thing. And also, I also consider, okay, well, in conjunction that it's been released since, let's see, last year, August of last year, and there is a lot of comments that point out issues. Well, that means that by the time I purchase it a year later, well, a lot of those bugs may have already been fixed. So that also gives me security in terms of, oh, okay, yeah, a lot of the kinks have been worked out. So that could be a good thing as well. But yeah, comments, I just read through it to see what kind of comments are posted. Are they praises? Are they negative in terms of something's broken? But then I'll also analyze, okay, what kind of responses and how fast. I also will look at, what kind of questions are being asked in terms of, do I get a lot of people asking, oh, can the template do this? Can the template do that? If I get a lot of, if I'm reading through and I feel that there's a lot of those types of questions, that indicates to me that perhaps it's not user friendly in terms of the backend. That's something I would consider. But for me, I'm experienced enough to know if the questions being asked are like, oh, is that just a non developer asking a question of basic stuff that should easily be answered, or should easily be answered, or are they like high more complex questions? So I consider that as well. But yeah, that's what I look for in terms of comments. If you have questions in terms of the capabilities of template, this is the section where you would ask the support team the specific questions you have, and then gauge how quickly they respond and the how detailed the responses are. So that way it gives you a feel later on if you actually have to, once you purchase it and you actually have to interact with the support team. The next thing I will look at is the star ratings. So the star rating is a little bit tricky. I don't look at the star ratings just by themselves. I also look at how many people have submitted a star rating. So as an example, if it's a 5-star rating but there's only like 2 or 3 submissions for that rating, I would dig a little bit deeper, just because it's just the volume, the metric volume is just so low. Same thing with 1 star. If it's a 1-star rating but there's only 2 or 3 people, okay, it might be just those two or 3. So yeah, I would consider star ratings in terms of ratings, but also overall sales volume. These metrics work together. In this case, it's 4.77 stars and it's 19,444 ratings. So that's a pretty good gauge that it's a high quality template. The next one come in conjunction as well. These two metrics, and for me, these two are probably going to be the most important metrics for me. When it was last updated and when it was created. So in this example, the last updated was essentially the same month, so like 2 weeks ago, or just a week ago. So that's important. So that tells me that the template's still being supported by the author. It's also recently created. So that typically will tell me that yeah, it's a modern template. It's most likely going to be compatible with the latest things, and we'll go with these metrics. We'll talk about these metrics later, as well as the latest version of software, latest version of WordPress. Sorry. So yeah, I typically will look for templates that are updated at least within the same year, but also created recently as well. So if it's created like over 3 years ago and it hasn't been updated recently, that kind of indicates that either the author is not keeping up to date or it's no longer being supported. So definitely consider these two to be towards the top of your grading criteria. If you are creating an e-commerce website, you're most likely going to use something like WooCommerce, maybe a different type of popular e-commerce plugins. Just double check to make sure that it's compatible with the e-commerce plugin that you're going to use. If you don't see it supported here, you might, if it's a not as well known e-commerce plugin, you may ask the theme author to see can it be supported. But just take it a grain of salt in terms of what the response is, because they're definitely gonna try to sell the template. So most likely you'll probably be using WooCommerce, and you'll be able to easily gauge if it's going to be compatible with WooCommerce. If the template is retail ready, e-commerce ready. Most likely for the next one, for software version, if it's updated pretty recently and it's created pretty recently, the version of WordPress will be recent as well. So as of right now, the most recent version of WordPress is 4.9.1. So we can see that it's definitely compatible with that. But this is kind of a given based on when it was last updated. Lastly, depending on the clients that I work with, some of them will require specific customizations to the template, and they're visual type of people. So instead of making the customizations live within code or within the configuration at the time of development, if it's a big customization, I may have to provide some visuals to kind of get it green lighted, as well as provide some changes to the scope because it's additional. Having layered PSD files is definitely a bonus that I like to see. And that way I could fire up my Photoshop and make the visual changes in Photoshop and present it to the clients to get them to greenlight it. And that allows me to make lots of variations quickly without actually having to spend the time to code it or configure it. So as a service provider, having layer PSDs is nice. It's not the end of the world if you don't get one, depending on what you need to do in terms of offering visuals, but it's definitely nice. And last thing that I typically would look for, and this one is going to be really tricky because from my experience, every theme that I looked at will always say well documented, or well documented. So typically with a lot of the themes, you could ask to get the themes because they have them online. You can either Google search for them, or you can ask in the support or in the comment area, like, hey, can I take a look at your documentation? Because again, a lot of times it's going to be on their website, on the author's website. And by looking at the documentation, I can gauge a lot of things from it. With a lot of documentations, there'll be screenshots that will show you the backend of the template where you would be making the configuration changes, and that allows me to kind of easily gauge if I could do something or not. Typically, the high quality templates will have really good documentation. They definitely put a lot of work in terms of making the documentation easy to read, lots of pictures, really good 1, 2, 3 step instructions, and that kind of gives me peace of mind that if it's well documented, they've already taken the extra step to really produce high quality stuff. So it also I can kind of in a way tell, okay, if it's well documented, most likely the support is going to be good as well if I need to email the support team later on in terms of questions, or if I have issues with the template. So documentation, definitely worth it to take it to the next level and try to get your hands on the actual documentation. If it's not on the website, I'm pretty sure they could just email it to you. A lot of them comes in PDF files, so it's not really a big deal for them to zip it up and send it to you so you can take a good look. And that's basically it in terms of the right hand side. So in the past video, when we were talking about design, I talked about complex / frameworks type templates, and then the OneOff. So Aveda is a framework, and what that means is that when I look at Aveda, and in the previous video we looked at Brooklyn, we went to the live preview, and in the live preview, let's scroll down, we see that with this one template, it can morph itself and make it and can look like a whole bunch of other ones. So let's open up a couple. I'm gonna click on dentist, click on daycare, we'll click on health. Let's do one more, photography. So definitely different industries, and just quickly take a quick look at what each one looks like, and we can kind of easily gauge, like, wow, they look dramatically different from each other. Wow, this one really looks different. Okay. So we quickly glanced through 4 different types of templates that's offered by the Aveda. And what that tells me is that it's a framework, meaning that this particular template is it's generic, so it allows you to essentially make any type of website that you want. So as a service provider, I may consider investing, learning, and purchasing a framework type template so that when I get really good at it, I can customize using the same template and same technology, I can customize future websites to look any way I need, and I can get very, very efficient with it and not have to worry about I would automatically know, because I'm familiar with the template, can it do something or can it not. When the client asks me, oh, I want this and I want that, I'll be able to answer right away, and I'll be able to use what I've learned from past websites I've built using the same template. A lot of times with these frameworks, they are going to be in the best-selling WordPress themes, and they are going to be the ones with like the most sales and a lot of activities. A lot of things going on with the comments. So, like for example, if we take a look at Brooklyn, definitely a lot of activities, a lot of sales, and the reason for that is because these frameworks, they're just so generic and so customizable that they fall within any category, and it sells out. It sells a lot. And when you get really, when you invest your time and learn these types of templates, you can basically build anything. So it's kind of worth it. For me, for example, I personally like Elegant Themes Divi template. That's what I've invested in learning. So, as a service provider, consider learning a particular complex framework theme than one-offs. However, one-offs do have advantages. The advantage is that right out of the box, they will look the way you need it to look. It also gives you ideas of, okay, in terms of if I was building if I was building like a wedding website, or if I build a wedding website, it'll automatically look like a wedding website instead of me building one from Aveda from scratch to make it look like a wedding website. If I was buying like a real estate, if I was creating a real estate website by buying a one-off real estate themed template, it's already going to have built in like the property mapping type of things, the real estate listings. It will be built into those templates already. So in terms of those niche sectors, looking at a one-off may make more sense because it's going to already get 90% there, and it's going to allow you to rapidly get to the end goal of delivering quicker than an Aveda type of template or a framework type template, where I think the advantage of these is like if you're creating a lot of generic type websites for small businesses, like a restaurant business, but sometimes you'll do like a bakery, or sometimes you'll do like a sweater shop, or like other mom and pop type things, that you could really take advantage of more of the generic looking ones with not specific functionality pieces. A framework is definitely worth it. If you are a owner and you're not a service provider, trying to get your head wrapped around a framework template may not be worth it, because they are going to be more complex. So consider that as well. And they may not offer close to what you want. Sometimes they do. Like this one has a wedding one, so this one might work out. But just know that there are other configurations options for, because it has to accommodate all the other ones. So something to consider. So like, let's take a look at it one-off. So let's close some of these tabs. Let's go back to ThemeForest. And let's look for one in, I saw a good example, a nonprofit. And let's look at this one right here, the first one in the nonprofits, live preview. So this one really gives me this nonprofit feel, I guess. So this might, if you were creating a nonprofit website, this might get you closer to the end goal than creating one from Aveda, as an example. If Aveda doesn't already have one already baked into it. But let's analyze the right hand side, and this is an example of, okay, it doesn't have a high sales volume, not too much activity in terms of the comments, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker. Same thing with the ratings. It doesn't even have three ratings. But again, it's not a deal breaker because I have to consider the fact that it's under the nonprofit category, where it's not gonna get a lot of sales volume. I'm assuming that this is quite like more of the not too many people making nonprofit websites and purchasing themes off of ThemeForest for it. So that's something to consider. So okay, if I run into a scenario like this, what do I do next? That's going to be what I talk about in the third part of the series, the company. So in this case, CMS Masters. Okay, let's start vetting out the company. But that's in the third scenario. So I want to go over a template as an example of one where, okay, I'm on the fence of maybe I shouldn't purchase it, and you'll see why. So in this example, we see that, okay, it has 105 sales, so not a lot, but that doesn't mean anything. It just depends on the category. 40 comments, and when I'm looking at the comments, alright, so in terms of the comment itself, I've noticed that, wow, the last comment that was made was 4 years ago. Well, that's definitely not a good sign. It does seem like the author has, respond, because sometimes you'll have people make comments and there's no response, so that's not a good sign. But in this case, yeah, the author's responding, but it's been so long ago. 3.5 stars with on an average of 9 ratings, 3.33 on an average of 9 ratings. Okay, that's not the best metrics in the world. So let's dig a little bit deeper, and this is kind of the deal breaker for me. Is, okay, last updated. Well, it was last updated a while ago, almost 5 years ago. So that tells me that most likely, well, not only was it last updated 5 years ago, it was last created like 5 years ago. Yeah, that tells me that this theme is probably no longer supported. So I wouldn't purchase this theme. Digging a little bit deeper, the last software version that is, I guess, officially supported is WordPress 4.0, and as of right now, we're at WordPress 4.9.1. So definitely not a good sign. So yeah, with this one, I would kind of be concerned about about purchasing it. In addition, let's see. Yeah, over here it's even saying, okay, the author is not supporting the items. I would encourage, if you're buying a template, to always check to see if you can extend the support. So here you can purchase additional support. Definitely go for that. It's definitely worth its weight in gold. When you don't see it, you're kind of on your own if something breaks. So definitely look for, okay, does the template even offer support? And if it does, definitely go for it. So here you definitely don't see that anymore. So yeah, I would definitely not purchase this one. So that's my process in terms of vetting out a template. So in our final video, we'll talk about vetting a template based on the company, the author that produced the template.